All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, Liz Rhoades, and Lew Bryson. Plus, this week, two special guests, John and Iain Stirling from Arbikie Distillery. I will let your hosts give an extended introduction to John and Iain in just a moment. Real quick, before we jump into all that, as always, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvi.co, and just want to point out a few ways you can interact with your hosts and their guests today during the show. On your right, there's a chat box, so say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. It's always great to see that. If you have a question at any point for John or Iain or any of your hosts, there's a little button at the bottom that says Ask a Question, so just hit that button, type your question in. I'll be keeping an eye out for those throughout the show. And last but not least, feel free to invite anyone you know to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes it really easy to do that. But with all that said, Marty, Liz, Lew, I will turn things over to you now.
Thanks there, Will. You're the best. And I hope you've been reading up on a lot of Lew and Liz's new books. Lew has another one out, Tasting Whiskey with Satanic Cults, where he sat down with a number of different cults and did whiskey and sacrificial offering pairings. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then he and Liz did a updated version of his whiskey masterclass with bungee jumping, and that's actually Liz jumping off the Hoover Dam. Unfortunately, this is after a bottle of wild turkey, so she forgot to tether
with the bungee,
bungee cord. She plummeted 400 feet, but she says in the book that the cement walls kind of broke her fall, and that after
the wild turkey helps too.
Yeah, well,
I don't condone this message. Safety first. PPE is very important.
Well, according to you in this book, you were up and running in about a year after you learned how to walk and talk again. So it's
a whiskey miracle.
It is. Whiskey miracles. They happen all the time. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Duffy, former senior master of whiskey for DIAGEO. And for 18 glorious months of my life, I was the national brand ambassador for Benedictine Franche Liqueur. 8 years as co-producer of the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo, and as of this month, 7 years as the sole brand representative for the Glencairn Crystal out of Scotland. Out of wee Scotland. Yeah, we make a new invisible Glencairn glass. Liz has been trying.
You thought the gold one was cool.
Totally translucent. Who'd ever think with glass? Oh my God. Anyways, Lizard.
Wow.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Liz Rhoades, technical distiller and spirit consultant. I have just over a decade of experience across alcoholic beverage. Worked on a number of different products and substrates, including beer, rum, vodka, but my particular favorite and expertise is, of course, in whiskey. Amazing, thank you. Spent most of my career at a little mom and pop known as DIAGEO, but now I'm currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. Hey, want to learn more? Scroll down to the About the Host section. There's actually a link to my website. So check it out. Give it a click. This is a special international edition. I am signing in today from Israel. So super excited that the Wi-Fi is outstanding here and super excited to talk into this conversation. So thanks for joining, Lew.
Spirit Safe Consulting, a true worldwide company.
Yes.
That's right. Hey, I'm Lew Bryson. I'm a whiskey writer. I was the managing editor at Whisky Advocate Magazine for 20 years, just toiling away in the word mines. And now I am back to freelance again. I am a senior drinks writer at the Daily Beast, award-winning half-full website about booze and food. And I am plugging my actual book without tape or Liz.
Whoa! You're international.
Available at fine bookstores everywhere.
Obviously.
Today I am drinking. I actually have a fantastic sample of Little Mill 27, and then I have a Little Mill 40 that I'm going to be knocking into, well, to be honest, pretty shortly, because this is tasting really good. Oh, thank you. Cheers.
All right. Well, just so you know, I have a Lagavulin 13-year-old port cask strength, deliciosos, as we say in my native country. Today, folks, this week, right now, and every other kind of time period you can think of, we have 2/3 of the brain trust of a distillery over in Scotland that is shaking things up a little bit, causing a stir, and is thinking about breaking off from the rest of Scotland.
Get your oars ready.
Yeah, because it's really close to the ocean. It could break off. Good earthquake come along. Anyways, we have, like I said, we have two of the brothers. David, the slacker, couldn't join us, I guess.
Slacker.
Yeah, so I'll run into him. He'll get a Chicago tune-up. But we have John and Iain Stirling from Arbikie Distillery. Hey. Guys, welcome. Welcome.
Yeah, delighted to be here. All the way from Scotland.
Iain, you know, Ian's looking a little like Glenn Fry from the Eagles. That's what I'm thinking.
We're going music, Marty. It's all good.
Except I don't think Glenn Fry could sing a peaceful, easy feeling with a Scottish accent. It's good.
They could try.
Yeah, he could. Well, if he was alive. Yeah. He could. If he could try right now, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
So, guys, as we typically do, we ask our guests to give a little background, a little resume, if you will. What were you doing, and how did you get into all this? Plus, we'd love to hear a little history about the farm, which sprung forth the fruit of your distillery. If that makes sense. I'm trying to talk English.
Take it away, Iain.
Iain.
Quite happy to. Where do we start? Being a big family, we all worked on the farm from a very young age, so farming was kind of key to what we did. Very much a family business, so we actually we were brought up in the house right next to where the distillery is, so life has gone full circle on that. We worked on the farm. Farming's really hard work. So we all left the farm, ran away as quick as possible because it was too much like hard work.
Which is very true.
Yeah. I ended up working in the drinks industry, so worked White Mackay, Jim Beam, with that, Invergordon, UDV, DIAGEO, and then was stupid enough to leave the industry for a while, and then we had the idea to do this, and obviously being farmers, growing all the crops we needed to distill, and a whole bunch of stuff just fell into place, and it was coming back in the industry, and as John will tell later on, or probably during the discussion, coming back to the industry is amazing because you're back in that collaboration. You're in a global industry. You're in the Scotch, the whiskey Scotch, global Scotch thing, where Scotland's so important, where the ingredients are really important, where family's really important. And it's, for me, it's a decades and centuries business. So it's a long-term thing. And it's just great fun to be involved.
Well, I mean, boy, so you're one of the few distillery owners that we've had on who actually had background in the drinks industry. There's been an awful lot. I mean, lawyers and pro golfers and dentists and, I don't know, dog catchers, all sorts of people. And now, so that's fast. So you went in knowing what the hell to expect to a degree.
In a way, it's very different being an owner. It's very different. But then, I was lucky day one induction, Richard Patterson, Dalmore House, White Mackay. You can't do much better than that in terms of straight into the industry. And I don't know how I left for a period of time, but it's a pleasure being back again. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for the invite.
You didn't have to mop up after Richard Patterson every time he threw the whiskey on the floor, did you?
I think everyone does. But Richard's amazing, and all these types of people, all the ambassadors, doing a fantastic job around the world and make our life easy.
Yeah.
because everyone knows what everyone knows what whiskey is. So if you're like me and you're going into export markets or distribution, every bar, every place you go into, you don't have to tell who you are, what you do, because everyone knows what you do. You go, I'm from Scotland, I distill whiskey, because every bar has whiskey on the shelf everywhere, which is pretty rare. Yeah.
John, now you have a shady past. I think that's been established.
I do have a slightly shady past. So I took a slightly different path. I escaped the farm, as Iain did, because it was way too much hard work. And then I found myself, I became an accountant. I became an accountant and started boring people to death. No offense to all accountants out there, but drink is slightly more exciting than that calculator. I did have a fortunate part to my accountancy where I ended up in Turks and Caicos Islands for about 4 years, when it was relatively legal. Is that the right word? Something like that. But so I found myself out there.
It's a
and
good
actually,
word. I
that
don't know
was
if it's the right word, but it's an interesting word.
Yeah,
It's an appropriate word for the moment.
Yes,
that almost sounds like celebrity accountants. I don't know, man.
Yes, it was. I can't really go into too much detail, but it's just it's definitely in the past now. But I suppose the good thing about going out there was I was suddenly introduced to rum and more spirits, and then and eventually I decided to go from one sunshine place, Turks and Caicos, to the sunshine state of Scotland, Angus, where our distillery is based. So maybe slightly different in terms of the number of days a year, like 365 to about 3.5, but it was something close.
Bikinis versus wetsuits.
Yeah, make sure you have that sunblock. What is that, level 2? Level 2 sunblock, just in case.
Moonblock.
So now the distillery is located on your farm. Is it inside? When I visited there, I thought maybe it was underground. I saw buildings. Is it in a barn?
Yeah, so it was original. Yeah. It was a dairy. So it was part of the barn, dairy, and what we did was we converted that dairy into the distillery, and when we were doing it, we found out that a few people had suddenly realized we were building this new field to bottle based sustainable distillery, and were searching us out. And we were very much about getting our product right, getting everything, and no visitor experience, anything like that. So actually we took signs down, we hid ourselves away, but we'd get people tramping through the fields in search of this mythical Arbikie Distillery. A lot of people thought we didn't exist. We even told some people that arrived, actually, you're at the wrong place. So, you must have got it wrong, which is slightly bad. But and kind of hid away.
No, we don't know that.
Hid away for a number of years. We have now, on the back of that, built a visitor experience, so we will be very soon welcoming people, but we were definitely hidden away. What we wanted to do was just get all our apples in one row and get ourselves up still and start producing whiskey. And then that's kind of what we did. We started off under the radar, but obviously as we developed, stories got out there, and then we did a few quite radical spirits as well that brought our more to attention.
John also put the sign on the distillery one day, massive letters across the thing, so suddenly everyone knew where we were. There was one day we didn't, because it was a green barn that no one knew what it was. It just looked like a tractor shed. And then the next day it's got the name on, and yeah, but it's just part of the process of welcoming people to come and see what we do. So it's a bit of a radical change, but now we've got the family of spirits there, whether it's the rye, whether it's malt, single malt coming, or vodkas or gins, everything's there. So gave our distillers a chance to do what they do.
I'm gonna dive right in here. So what are you growing, and did chicken or the egg, right? Did you change some of your farming practices, varietals, etc., based on what you wanted to distill, or did you have the crops and were like, let's make something amazing out of this?
It's a good question. What we knew from the very start, because I'm from we're from a very much farming background. So we know about the soil, we know about the climate, we know about different varieties. And this is across whether it's potatoes or barley or rye or peas. We know that effect of the climate, and we're in a microclimate that has on, and we also know a bit more about flavor. And what's happened throughout the world is people have lost flavor a bit and gone for yield. So that's whether yield in crop or yield in distilling. And we wanted to actually look back, and particularly some of the older whiskies, and why did they taste so different? Why were we found them better, more flavoursome, some of them? How do you actually achieve that? And so at the very start, we started looking at what we term as heritage varieties. So I have a diary here that tells me what heritage varieties we were growing in the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. And we went back and we chose 4 different varieties, which I can't name at the moment. I might later tonight, but and we chose them basically from different generations. And with that, because they've died out, we basically got the seeds and we have multiplied them up. So this year, we will have enough to plant to actually create our whiskey for next year. So it's been a long process doing that. But what is interesting is that they've got shorter growing seasons. The flavor profile, we think, is and will be significantly different, because what we also realize with the way that whiskey has gone with yield is you have the same varieties out there. So you've got, in Scotland, you have the 1, 2, 3 varieties that are basically sister, brother, you know, and all the new ones, the Diablo that's coming out now, or the Sassy, the newer ones, they're really the cousin of you know, coming from Concerto. And really there's no real difference in flavor. And what we're trying to do is go back, we'll get smaller yield, but we think it'll make a significant difference. And that's why, you know, this kind of terroir, you don't necessarily have to use the word terroir, but base spirits in the farm is very important to what we're doing.
So you would say a lot of the, you know, agricultural research and plots that you're doing is mainly focused in barley and spring barley, or no, right? Because you've first rye whiskey, right? So what else do you have going on?
Yeah. So, you know, we, what we're trying to do as well is because sustainability has become a big issue around the world, and rightly so, but it fits into what we're doing, because what we realized is we've become too big in many ways and not looked after our fields. And we have been responsible for that as well as farmers. Produce as much as you can, ignore your natural environment. And we're trying to regress slightly. And therefore, we started growing rye because we looked back at whiskey that was made, Scotch that was made, and found out that rye used to be very prevalent. And we thought, we'll go back and try rye, and we were wondering why no one's done it. And I think the main thing is it's just slightly harder. It's harder to grow. It can only grow really in the East Coast because if it's too wet, it's very difficult to deal with. And then we looked at that and said, why don't we do this? And it did take a lot more work, but it's a really, really exciting crop to grow because the flavor is significantly different from the barley, and that's what we've been looking at. So when we've been doing our Highland rye, we've looked at the influence of cask, and we've looked at just, you know, plain oak and the influence of that, and that makes it even more exciting because we realize we can more than likely do the exact same with our malt whiskey.
But now, have you guys been getting anybody, you know, doing some quick head turns because they see wait a minute, it's a Scotch rye. You know, typically anyone thinks of Scotch, they think of single malts, you know, 100% malted barley. Here you have a rye. And by the way, is this 100% rye, or is there?
No, it's not. No, so it's roughly 53, 55% rye, and then you've got wheat, and then you've got your enzyme because it's a Scotch whiskey through the barley, the last little percentage. So, but I think we are in the very start of our journey with rye, and we find it absolutely fascinating. And what we're trying to do as well is look at the cask influence. What we're not trying to be over sherified or over bourbonified. We're really trying to let the grain come through as much as possible. And so we're very experimental on this. And the reason we chose it is because actually it used to be grown and it used to be fundamental whiskey Scotch in Scotland. And what happened is it kind of died out, obviously hit the northeast of the US and Canada, and they still grow quite a lot of rye in Europe. But we actually went back to looking at experimentation of this. I mean, you had rye, you had oats, and you had your barley and your wheat that all were part of the Scotch whiskey industry.
I think it's fascinating, because what you're doing is what a lot of folks over in Ireland have been doing as far as going back and researching old, single pot still mash bills and finding that, oats and rye played a big part. And then they're trying to bring those back. It's amazing. Like 120 years later, people are going way back to the 19th century to find
Can I bring up the George Washington thing here?
Yeah,
George.
It is interesting.
Washington's distiller for the rye whiskey was a Scotsman.
He was a Scotsman. That's it.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, we've had a few challenges and technical challenges. We had, the Scottish Whisky Association. I suppose I can say this live. They tried to stop us.
Did they really?
Yeah, they did.
Did they send the ninjas? That's what I want to know.
Sorry.
Did they send the ninjas out?
Yeah.
They did. Yeah.
Well, they couldn't find your distillery, could they?
Exactly. It's called technical legal team and stop now kind of.
Those ninjas are the worst.
That's what we carried on.
Just standing in the field, looking around, and go, where is it? I don't see it.
But
that's why. Marty. That's why we hid. See, it was all part of the plan.
Exactly.
They won't know where to find it, right?
No.
So they just hid until they had something ready to sell, and they're like, sorry, we already got it.
Liz is going to have to go eventually to make her final hideout.
And I think what's interesting about that is, when you do different, more innovative things, you always come across barriers. And the good thing we know now is a lot more of the distillers are now making rye whiskey. And I've got a very good story I'll just tell of how we very early on, we knew people were now looking at what we were doing and deciding to look at the rye route, because I had a lorry driver who came in to pick up grain, because we are a farm, and he's picking up malting barley to go to one of the bigger distillers. And he looks in the corner and goes, "Oh, that's rye." And I said, "Oh, I'm surprised you know what rye is, because it's not that common anymore." And he went, "Oh no, I've been shipping loads of this into a certain distillery." And I went, "Oh, that's very interesting." One of the larger ones.
That's what some of my
in the West Coast.
I guess earlier on in my career, there was some distillers with much more experience that I learned from, and one of them famously was always like, "Oh, just watch the trucks in and out. Then you know what they're doing."
and they always know, same as parcel deliveries or anything else, because they see everything. Yeah,
it's absolutely true. I get so much information from the trucks and the lorry drivers when they come in there and they're going round. They tell me, "Oh, this is going in there. They're short of this here. They're looking for that." I go, "Perfect."
Work of informers. Amazing.
How much grain this truck would hold. That's how much their capacity is. Yes.
It's so true. That's why it is very funny, especially with the big guys when they're trying to keep secrets. Usually the big guys are following the little guys anyways, as far as innovation. It just always seems that way. But they also try to keep everything secret. But if you know the right people, you talk to someone and go, "Oh yeah, no, they've been doing that for a while. Yeah, no, it's no big secret. Yeah, they've been doing that."
Scotland's a very, very small place. It's and there's not that many people in the industry, and I don't think you can keep any kind of secret here. And we've always been very open about what we do in the distillery, and we've had all the distillers really around Scotland to come in. The good thing is they are interested in what we're doing. They're interested in how we're kind of gone back, and a lot of them have said it's fantastic because you can do this and you can do that instead of and what we try to do is not create the same whiskey every year. So it's more seasonal. So depending on what we're growing, depending on the climate, we don't mind it. 2020 is going to be different from 2021 and 2022, like a wine. Whereas,
like a vintage.
Yeah,
Exactly
vintage.
that.
Whereas the bigger companies are trying to recreate that exact same spirit every year, which is a massive challenge in itself. But we prefer what we are doing. It's more fun.
Wow.
So
That's funny. Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
no, it's just so I guess back to your microclimate, and you mentioned the shorter growing seasons, and I'm sure that's great for crop rotation, especially rotating out rye and barley. Any sort of exciting varietals? Because you mentioned you have a very specific climate where you guys are at, or any sort of learnings from a farming practice, but also from a flavor perspective that you can comment on.
Yeah, I can. I think with the varieties, that one of the main things, and one of the reasons we did, apart from the flavor and the flavor profile with some of the varieties we are growing, is that we looked at how we grow and how we can reduce nitrogen. So what we've done is we've done a lot of work with peas, and we actually produced a pea vodka and a pea gin, and that's why it's the only climate positive spirit in the world, because by utilizing peas, they actually nitrogen fix. So you don't need nitrogen, but they're also taking carbon out of the atmosphere. So that creates its own innovation, because this year we undercropped barley with peas.
You're talking green peas.
Yeah,
Those
green peas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are nitrogen fixing, but then automatically giving the barley its nitrogen. And so it's one of these things we're not quite sure how it's going to work. So we did part of the field with peas and barley, another part with peas, and another part with barley, just to explore that kind of innovation. But that could have an effect on the way you actually grow your particular crops. And all the way through, one of the other things is we're trying to reduce down any kind of not bad inputs, but chemical inputs into the crop. We're trying to keep them as clean as possible. And therefore, there's a whole host of innovation you can get to do into the farming practice of creating whiskey. We're lucky we have the James Hutton Institute that is very close by, and they are absolutely brilliant. So we work very closely with the people there, and they are feeding us huge scientific information. And Kirsty Black, our distiller, she did her PhD in the extraction of alcohol from peas with Aberdeen University and Hutton Institute. So we've worked really closely with them on really innovation that will influence whiskey going forward.
That's great.
Yeah,
Peas.
Right. Yeah, I imagine, and that was sort of, and I'm glad you commented on that, because I imagine sort of your innovation is also setting the stage for, climate change is huge. Facultative barley is an area of topic here in the States. Facultative winter barley, not needing to hit mineralization, that sort of thing, because it's a little bit of a guessing game right now. So I imagine kind of the work that you guys are doing are really going to help the industry holistically, in the future, just with climate change alone.
Yeah, we hope so. And I think you always get your doubters, and anything is like, no, there's no difference from this flavor. No, there's no difference from that flavor. And we can never definitively say things yet, because there's so many years to go. But I am pretty confident that our varieties are significantly different in terms of flavor profile. It's what our challenge is to make sure they're not masked too much with the cask influence. And we knew when we distill potatoes, and we use 3 different varieties to 97% creating the neutral spirit, that our Cultra potato compared to Maris Piper were significantly different. Cultra being far more earthy. And it's kind of realization that there are different varieties, significantly different varieties out there. And the learning from that helped us learning in terms of what we are doing in terms of making our single malt. And similarly, using rye again and creating the Highland rye. significantly helps our learning.
I think also for the industry, we're of a scale, and because we own farms and distill, which is quite rare. So we're doing the field to bottle. So you're doing the growing, distilling, maturing all in one site. We're almost like a laboratory in a way for the bigger distilleries. And also because of social media and because of medium like this, that message gets out there. So people start asking. So the pressure then comes on for others to be, why are you not doing it that way? Or where's the learning from what these guys are doing? Because it's the same as when we launched the Highland Rye. We put field varieties, everything on the front label. It was very transparent. So, you know, we'll innovate, we own the business, and we can take decisions quick. I think that's one of the advantages as well. The bigger firms are obviously conglomerates. You know, I worked at DIAGEO. A few of you worked for DIAGEO too. So you know how complex those organizations can be. And that's where John farming there, we can discuss it, make a decision, and it's just done. And actually we can trial things, because that's the space we live in. And also if you've got distillers like Kirsty, our master distiller, or Christian that works with her as well, the distillers, they're incredibly good at what they do. And John should probably, you know, the casking with Christian and everything else in terms of his knowledge of the wine industry, it's amazing what is there in terms of the elements for a relatively, you know, we're a 6-year-old startup. So in terms of the industry, we're very much a young business.
It was interesting when going back one step, when we were looking at starting up this distillery, we actually got drunk one night in New York, and the more we had to drink, the more the idea seemed fantastic. So by the end of the night, it was the best idea ever. How could we possibly go wrong? But actually, in the cold light of day, we looked at it and said, we have the history, we have the knowledge, we have the farmland, and it was about really getting a fantastic distiller. But when we looked at this, our fundamental was grow everything on the farm, do everything here, create that sustainable circular economy, you know, for long term, so we can trace anything to 2 centimeters on the farm we're growing. We know every single thing that's going on, and I was looking at that kind of model, and also having no outside investors. And I don't mean this badly, but we didn't want someone saying you've got to do that, you've got to make a quick profit, because we're not meaning to release our single malt till year 18. And that's more of a statement saying we don't want to release it young because of money or anything else. And people say you'll never do that. Well, I assure you, our aim is to do that. And we picked out year 18, not specifically for year 18, but to say we want to keep our single malt till we think it's absolutely at its peak. And that's kind of
18 years? An 18-year-old.
But probably be our first single malt. There may be, if it develops quicker, and if there's something suddenly at 16 or 17 or 15, we can release a certain amount. But the idea is because what we're doing is to try and peak our single malt at a prime stage, and having control of the business allows us to do this. And actually, when we looked at the business model, that was the advantage of having your vodkas and your gins, apart from learning, but also the Highland Rye. And the rye is a younger maturing, so it's probably going to peak somewhere between 4 and 8 years, somewhere in there, we reckon, before it gets too woody. So it's interesting with what we're doing here. And the final thing we looked at was in the business plan, was we thought, if it all goes wrong, we're going to have a very good time drinking all this whiskey for the next 25 years. And that was the decider.
Yeah.
But
are you mainly farmers? Yes. I mean that's so you can afford. I mean, that's just it. A lot of distilleries, they churn stuff out at 2 to 6 months because they have to put something out there. And but your farm is giving you the capability of being able to sit back and go, all right, we'll let that rest for a couple of decades. And
I think as you know, I mean, family wise, we've got a tradition of being a legacy businesses. So if you've been there for 400 years farming, this is just a 6-year-old business. So actually, you know, you're in the decades and centuries whiskey's business. So it has to be embryo. That. Yeah, right. It is, you know, and particularly in terms of whiskey, because, you know, if you're going to do something serious that's going to last generations, we used to do some with a marketing business. God bless us. And we used to do some work with William Grant. So, you know, a 4th, 5th generation whiskey family, and there's lots of learning from working with people like that and seeing how they've worked. Because obviously that's a fairly successful business, to say the least. But there's the longevity of something like that is what we're looking at. Because why wouldn't we, when you've got a history of handing businesses on from one generation to another? So, just now we're planting oak trees that'll take 50 years to grow. John and I won't be here. So, it's on to, it's already moved into the, well, okay, yeah, well.
Well, I might not.
Photogenics or whatever, but there you go. But you're thinking that way. I think that's, my point is you're always thinking like that. So actually 18 isn't that long.
No, I mean, that's true. Now, so with the three brothers, David is over here in the U.S.
Yep.
He's kind of your brand manager over here.
He's in market. Yep.
John does the farming. Kirsty does the distilling. I think you said Christian does the barrel. Ian, what the hell do you do? Because I'm a little curious, man.
That's the best question I've heard.
It's easy. It's right above me. I do the world. Someone's got to sell the stuff.
I do the world.
You sell maps? Nice. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I get to travel to the nice sunny places.
The Scots, you guys are addicted to sunny places. They're not all that great. They're not.
Oh, they can be when it's a little bit chilly,
Yeah, no. I love Scotland. My skin is never better than when I'm in Scotland. Very moist. Yep. Yeah.
But it's sunshine above tasting. It goes a long way.
You get 3 days. What are you complaining about?
Exactly. Look at that lovely tan.
The Arbikie has a tanning salon right next to the distillery. So, hey, speaking of barrels, what are you guys doing with barrels? Is it all just first fill? Do you use second, third fill? Are you using, something other than former bourbon barrels?
And I will tack on as well, like backing up to the distillery.
Back me up, Liz.
Walk through. So we talked about the farm.
Oh, walk through the production.
The cask here.
Okay.
Take us through
the question. You're asking it. Okay.
A mental tour.
Gotcha.
You want a mental tour of the distillery? Is this what you're asking?
Yes, the continuum. Yes. So we talked about crops.
Where do the crops go once you harvest them?
So I suppose so. What we do is once we've got the crops harvested, they get stored here, and then we separate out obviously the different varieties, the wheat, the barley, the peas, and then we have that whole production of scheduling in times of the year of when we're doing single malt and when we're doing rye whiskey, and then 1 month of the year we make the white spirits. I think the good thing is that on the farm, because we're growing everything, and we actually even have grow tunnels, polytunnels, where we're growing chili, because we make a chili vodka, so we can actually grow chilies in Scotland. It's kind of demonstrating we can grow absolutely everything. But I think that the important part about that is by controlling each process and knowing what's going into each process, we then have a handle on the flavor profile and what we're trying to do, and that then comes to the stage of once we're in production as casks. So casks is vital to us. We will be learning all our life about casks and the influence of casks. So we have as most people have the sherry and the bourbon. We've looked at different wine casks. We've looked at really all the types of casks, more from an experimentation type, and seeing the influence of both rye and barley on these casks. And even we've put vodka in the cask as well. So we've got one that's vodka in a cask that's going to be very interesting in about 4 or 5 years to just see the flavor profile of that. We learn so much from that kind of work. And then obviously using just straight oak and charring it differently, and just getting and understanding the full appreciation of the different woods, the different casks, French oak, American oak. We've even looked at Scottish oak, as we noticed some other people are doing. And so we're just all aspects, because once you understand that more, you then understand your warehousing, your dunnage, the influence of climate on that. And there's just so many different elements. It becomes both exciting, but also important for us to try and work out what the major influences are and not disguise some of them, particularly with using casks.
So the Scottish oak, is there been a lot of research in that? Because I think about, right, European versus American oak being quite different compositionally, of note, eugenol levels, tannins, etc. Has there been some work?
Scottish oak, no. And the problem with Scottish oak is it probably does not produce good casks. So whether you can use them in the cask end and have an influence of that, there's been various bits of work. But we've looked at Scottish oak, and I think one of the problems there is just the quality of the oak. But we're not completely ruling it out.
Okay.
Is that a different species, or is that another species that's just grown in Scotland?
Yeah, no, it's just your normal sort of, I suppose, European type species, but it's growing in Scotland. But I think it's down to the climate that influences the oak, to be honest.
How about this? Instead of wood, you take stag's horns, submerge them in the new make, close the barrel, let that simmer for 18 years.
That would be a good idea, and then I could have the SWA visit me again. And I'd definitely be thrown out this time.
What? What?
What did you say?
Horns. From a deer.
Oh, okay.
Antlers.
Got it.
Yeah, show me in the SWA regulations.
The RSPCA too.
Yeah, exactly.
PETA. You might have PETA at your door. So what? They can't find you. Nobody can find them. So it's fine. You guys are in a perfect position. Yeah, no, go ahead. Show me in the SWA where it says, can't put animal parts in your whiskey.
We might have to make a special version for you.
I'll drink it.
Right? So
I'll bet you anything. You make it for me, everybody will want some. It'll be that hot. That's an idea, guys. Thrown out.
Watch what you wish for.
I always just take whatever happens with my wishes.
What's your name up in New Hampshire is making a meat whiskey, aren't they? They make like a meat infused whiskey. Yeah.
Yes. The deer.
Yeah. Tamworth, I think it was.
Are they putting the meat in the whiskey and letting it?
It's doing
like uncooked meat.
Little maceration.
I don't know.
A nice juicy steak and put it in a whiskey.
What's that?
A nice juicy cooked steak and put it in a whiskey.
I wonder if it's like ceviche, if it cooks the.
Well, think about that. Take that steak out afterwards, throw it on a grill. Delicious.
Stand back.
Yeah, I might blow up.
That's different.
I think protein coagulation for sure. It might be a little tough.
Liz, you had an actual serious question, didn't you?
Right.
Sorry. Are you serious?
No, I was just gonna say, like Pachuca Mezcal, right? Like they hang.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the vapor train, right? Chicken breast, rabbit. It's a thing.
The vapor train.
Huh?
In the vapor train.
The vapor train? Is that something Ozzy Osbourne used to sing about?
Yeah, you lost me there. We're on
the vapor train.
The vapor train, like a gin basket, but a little.
Okay. Gotcha.
Thank you. The frusticonical region.
She's trying to make us look dumb again, Marty. And
let's go back to Scotland, Liz. Too much peyote down in Mexico there.
Malting. Are you
guys
house or are you partnering?
Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to get us back on track here.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well done.
I'm asking about malting.
Now she derailed it. She wants to put it back on track.
We're on the vapor train derail. Now I'm going back to malting. So are you
with a photo of the vapor train?
Are you doing malting in house?
No, at the moment, the only thing we don't do is the malting in house. So
Okay.
we actually drive it in our tractors into Montrose, where there's Bourch malt, 7.5 miles away, and then we drive it back. But we do have plans to do our own malting. So that is the next step for us to completely close the loop, because we have our maturation there. We bottle on site. We do absolutely every single aspect, and all the waste products potentially go back to feed some Highland cattle and everything. So we've got that complete loop apart from the maltings.
That's sort of I was learned schnapps model, right? It's back, right? You're spent grain back to the bottle, and it's that full cycle. That's very cool. So how many animals do you have on your farm as well?
Yeah, at the moment we've got we had Aberdeen Angus before, because we're an Angus, and now we've got Highlanders. So we've got 5 Highlanders, and we're aiming to have a lot more. And we've got a next door neighbour, so he's got hundreds of cattle. So he takes our spent grains and feeds them to them. But Highlanders are beautiful animals. They don't eat quite so much as the Aberdeen Angus, but the whole part of this is we're using the spent grains, the draft that feeds them, and then they're actually really good in terms of regenerative farming. So it's suddenly become important that having the rotation with grass in it with animals is actually vitally important, because actually the poor cow and animal has had a really hard time recently in terms of climate change, when actually it's the human, it's not the animal, it's the way we farm, it's the way we do everything. So they do actually play an important part in the whole crop rotation and everything. So it's just utilizing them properly, and they're beautiful to look at.
John, as a farmer, do you ever get attached to your little Angus cows? And when it comes time to, you ever kind of get a little misty-eyed and go, slay the Angie?
Well, the good thing is that they are family pets, so they are here for their life. So they're here to say hello to any visitors we have, to get lots of pictures taken, and to perform that role. So they have a beautiful life. Yeah.
Are they the shaggy ones, like
Yes.
the Highland coos?
Yeah.
Oh, I love those
Highlanders.
things. They look like a cow had sex with a sheepdog.
They've got a big fringe and everything.
Yeah, they're great
super
looking.
cool.
I
Big
love those.
horns.
I chased them around up on Ben Lomond, up in the mist. I was chasing them until I realized Ben Lomond's like a big sponge, and he has holes straight into holes and stuff. I'm not much of a mountain climber.
No.
Well, see, that's sweet. I'm glad. Do you guys have sheep too? You wouldn't be a real Scotsman if you didn't have sheep.
No, sorry.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Sheep.
Trying to eliminate temptation. Is that it?
Sheep are dumb, mate. Sheep are dumb.
Further north and further west. That's where sheep are scared.
Just ignore that, Liz.
Yeah, but it's probably advantageous because sheep are very sensitive to copper.
They are very sensitive. They're very loving too.
To copper, you missed the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. To copper. Are they really? They're sensitive to copper. They don't want to be near distilleries.
You mean so not good for them to eat spent grain? They're sensitive to copper. Oh, okay.
Get out. Really?
Tip of knowledge, Marty.
Yeah.
Yes, I just took a big gulp right there when it came to sheep and copper. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you guys know that?
No, I'd heard something. I didn't know the reason, but that would make sense to me.
Huh. Okay.
I would like to tell everyone in the audience, by feeding the Highland cattle, the Highlanders, are spent grain, they're not getting a little dose of whiskey each morning either.
Yeah.
Sadly.
I'm
sure you guys are very efficient, so that would be good. Yeah.
I used to tell people though that because the distilleries were giving their spent grain to the cows, that's why there was mad cows down in England, but happy cows up in Scotland.
Actually, that's not untrue.
Lou,
well, no, I mean,
have you done some investigation into cows' attitude?
No, if the mad cow is coming from eating offal.
You're
getting distillery waste
rather than eating the vegetables and all the waste from everywhere else, which you used to in the past, and keep it simple.
Scotland's much less intensive, and you've got big areas of grassland and feeding them natural products. It definitely helps.
And you don't turn cows into cannibals. I mean, that's horrible. They weren't aware of it. Poor cows.
Cannibals.
Now they're cows. Zombies. Zombie cows.
So,
yeah.
Thanks, Lew.
we mentioned something, and we actually talked about this before the show started, and we specifically said we didn't want to turn this into a non-whiskey show, but I got to ask about the strawberry vodka.
So I kind of mentioned before about experimentation, pushing boundaries. So Kirsty, when we're looking at what we were producing and everything, we looked at how can we do something quite differently, and we looked at the flavored vodka market that really is just chemicals added to a neutral spirit, and you get, we had someone initially came and said, yeah, we do natural flavors, and it's what one of 196 would you like? And we said, no, we don't do anything like that. Right? All we do is anything grown on the farm will go back into what we're trying to do. And therefore, we did a chili vodka, but that's a maceration with chilies that we grow on our farm, and then we smoke them through a whiskey cask, and we use that for Bloody Marys or Bloody Caesars, just to demonstrate what you can do and create consistency with creating the neutral spirit and growing chilies. And then we looked at it further. So Kirsty, we looked at doing what seasonal fruit have we got that grows massively in Angus, and that was strawberries. But the challenge there was to do a pure distillation, and by using wheat-based vodka and strawberries and distilling that through, you create a clear spirit. And the challenge was retaining the flavor and the smell. And it took Kirsty, I think, about 1.5 years to crack this, so it retains that. And you've got this strawberry vodka. You just need to open it and smell it, and you realize it's just a most fantastic spirit. It is 50% ABV, wow. So 100% proof. So and we can only produce 3.5 at the moment, about 3,500 bottles a year, because that's dependent on the strawberry crop.
Now, are you putting
I would imagine it takes a lot of strawberries.
Yeah. Well, are you putting the strawberries straight into the wheated vodka and then redistilling it? Like I know Tanqueray will put the fresh fruit in its Tanqueray number 10.
Correct.
But, is that what you're doing with the strawberries, or are you mixing the strawberries up into a kind of a juice?
So we kind of macerate them first, and then we put them into the distillation. And that's why you'll see our strawberry vodka is completely clear. But if anyone ever opens any kind of flavored vodka and then opens our strawberry vodka, just smell them, and you absolutely smell the difference straight away. So it's strawberry jam, and you get that complete freshness.
Are they wrapped? Oh, go ahead.
It's just the smell of the summer. It's just an amazing aroma. And when you're doing tasting shows or anything else, people will always come back going, can I just have another smell of that, please? Because it's just amazing. And hence that write-up we got recently, because when people discover it, they discover it because we don't have a lot. And we can't do a lot of it, but it's a fabulous drink.
And we used to sell, we still do sell quite a bit into places like the Ritz in London. And what they do is a champagne cocktail. So they'll have a bit of strawberry vodka with it, champagne. They say the finer the champagne, the better, which is easy for them to say. And but it creates, one of the things they absolutely love that. And also at the start of the party, it absolutely gets the party started. If you've got our strawberry vodka and some champagne, you're going to have a good night.
But is the strawberries wrapped, or are they in a basket?
No, so they actually come. So they're just in they're basically in a big half-ton basket that we just put in and measure them out.
Wow!
So they're just floating around in the spirit.
Yeah.
Is that a bitch to clean afterwards? It's
not too bad.
It's all relative compared to potatoes and everything else.
Don't get me wrong. There are. If you were mass producing something, it's a challenge.
Well, I'm just thinking strawberries have seeds, all those seeds, and they're getting inside your still, and you got to get in there and pick them out.
I think Marty, it's also easy
for
to
get burned on.
Yeah. Marty, it's also easy for John and I to say that when we're not doing the distilling.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
It's really easy. I'm sure Kirsty and Christian probably disagree on that one.
The bosses. The guys love doing
It's
it.
easy.
They love clean
Direct
distilling.
fired. You're not direct fired stills, are you?
What kind?
Direct fired.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So it's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I'm sure the distillers will disagree on that one.
It's like when we come up with things like nice little neck tag for the bottle and nice little this label for that, and then because we do your own bottling, it's got to be hand done, and you can just see the look in their faces. So,
If folks want to learn more about the strawberry vodka and Arbikie Distillery in general, David, the slacker, did a really good article with Aaron Goldfarb on Vine Pair. It came out today, so just Google that and check that out. It's not available over here in the beautiful US of A, is it?
yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It is. Yeah, it is available.
Yeah.
It is very limited, as I kind of said, but it is available. And since that article's come out, we've noticed that significant demand for it. So it's probably
get it before it's gone.
Yeah,
it is going, because it definitely is going.
Well, the Sip of Knowledge team is always open to free samples being sent to them. Is everything you guys making collectible? I mean, limited? It could become collectible, but I mean, is it all limited? Because you were saying before, like your whiskeys will probably be vintage. So if that's vintage,
yes,
everything else
simply, and also as John was saying, in terms of seasonality, we won't have that consistency, so the products will vary over time. The mainline ones, but also your whiskies are always going to be limited edition because there's only certain per year.
That's funny. Even Aaron Goldfarb in his article stated, I had no idea strawberries grew in Scotland. Now, when I go to the UK, you stay at a hotel, there's always beautiful fresh fruit available. They always do the fresh fruit, and I think that's great. But I'm always thinking that is imported, my friend. That's coming from Mediterranean.
Our area in particular, it produces in terms of size of population, everything, the most amount of strawberries in the UK, the Angus region. And really, it's the biggest producer in Scotland. It is because, again, that microclimate of sunshine, less rain, and particularly the sunshine in Scotland. And we've kind of got that, and that influences the strawberries, and obviously influences the barley varieties.
I saw my only double rainbow in Scotland.
Was that before or after the whiskey?
I saw Highland Coo, both rainbows after the
flying over the rainbow.
I love the winged Highland Coos. They're the best, the winged ones.
And two rainbows.
Yeah.
We had some comments and some questions, so let's do that. Let's see. Brad Krause. Hey, Brad. Our boy Brad.
Panama.
Thanks for joining.
Panama.
Tina Wolford says greetings from Durham, North Carolina. Go Wolfpack.
Bull Durham.
Barbecue.
Okay, so question from Derek Stewart. So Derek, hey, from the James Hutton Institute. Thank you for joining.
Or the mentally insane.
Hi, Derek.
I know that institute.
Iain and John, how much value do you think the climate positive aspect will bring? Is it a bubble that will burst?
Definitely not, because, well, the climate issues we've got, the climate emergencies, so it's going nowhere. I think people have definitely moved on to climate positive or sustainable spirits has definitely come to the fore, particularly during lockdown, because there's now sustainable spirit menus coming out, cocktail-wise and everything else. So the whole thing's moving on. And I think, is it a bubble or burst? No chance. I think also COP26, by coincidence, is also happening here in Scotland. So, it's something that even if all those world leaders weren't getting together and having to do something about this, because they're kind of being forced to doing it, it would have to happen anyway, because I think consumers want it.
I think you should also say in reference to Derek, of people that don't know him, he is
Really?
one of the leading experts in the world in this whole field and in the circular economy at the James Hutton Institute, and they are doing absolutely unbelievable work around the world. And a lot of the stuff we have done with Kirsty and P and Climate Positive Gin and all that is thanks to that institute and people like Derek in particular for the research and the work they are doing in this field. And it is vital. And I think it's good as well because it kind of takes an organization like that research and we're trying to put some of their things into practice.
Where is the James Hutton Institute located?
Dundee. So just the others. We're north of Dundee. They're just south of Dundee. So on Scotland's east coast, again on the sunny east coast of Scotland.
Sunny.
Yeah, and
are all the results coming back? It's cloudy again. That might hinder them.
That's just the west coast.
Oh, wait a minute, it's sunny. Oh no, cloudy again.
Yeah, I think that's you. I think mentioned with the cocktail menu and the environmental sustainability aspect that. I'm normally based in New York City, and I was actually in the city out and about a couple weekends ago, and I noticed that a lot of the menus, instead of adding caloric values, which was a huge trend a couple years ago, but they're now adding carbon footprint and emissions. So instead of whatever this cocktail is 250 calories, or like this is how much CO2 emissions were a part of making this cocktail. And I think that's really an interesting step. And I think it goes back to the consumer aspect that you were mentioning.
I think it's definitely driven there, and people have been buying online, particularly in line during lockdown. They've been trying new things. That agenda is definitely there, and we're seeing it all over the world, absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
How much of a carbon footprint does a Manhattan have? Liz, you're a scientist. You should be able to tell me that off the top of your head.
At the same time, there was also a movie being filmed. I'm sure they didn't care. So
all their trailers and buses were running at the same time all day long.
Yep, absolutely. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, and I think it's tied into a lot of the good work. Derek, thank you. Thanks for that at the James Hutton. But I mentioned the work that Pat Hayes is doing at Oregon State University, qualitative winter barley varietals. So I think there is a lot of interesting research that's happening right now, and it'll be exciting to kind of see what comes of it. Certainly, we need it.
Yeah, I think it's important as well because it pushes boundaries and it lets you revisit what you've been doing and not necessarily do the same stuff that's over and over again because that's the way it's always been done. And I think it's actually good for the industry and it challenges it.
Hey, John, go ahead.
It's also just a state of mind where we've spoken about innovation and we actually want to do it. So you're embracing that research and then applying it to our farms. And I think it's the ideal scenario with James Hutton in particular, that they're very close by, but they're also innovating all the time. And I think it's just having that mindset of us as brothers running a business, but also Kirsty and Christian in terms of distilling, is actually go away, innovate, and actually just apply these things and trial everything.
Guys, I was just curious, do you ever, since you are kind of unique in that you're farmer distillers, there are a lot of farmer distillers over here in the U.S. I'm sure there are up in Canada, I would think. Do you guys ever commiserate with them and kind of exchange notes? I mean, just because, you talk farm talk, hey, my cows are like this, or my corn is like this. I'm just curious because there's traditionally there has been a lot of interaction between Scottish and they say Kentucky distillers in the past. We're seeing a little more of it now, people branching out. But I would just think as farmers, you'd want to maybe exchange notes a little more, especially there's a lot of brothers I know who own distilleries and farms. You guys get together, have fights, tug of wars?
It's a good question, and yes, we do, and across North America and obviously Canada. And I think one of the things that's happened is that Kirsty and Kristen both came out of Heriot-Watt University, who have this absolute fantastic brewing and distilling element to them, and it's become so international that an awful lot of the North American distillers, or quite a good percentage, have been there. And then what that happens is you get exchange of knowledge, and you know, you mentioned earlier some of the organizations, and we've always been open about what we do. Some of it's slightly different because we are producing Scotch, and you're limited in certain things you can do, and you can do different things in the US. But I think that knowledge transfer is very important, and we're certainly always open to working and learning from people around the world.
Yeah, I would just think that, especially nowadays, you can do one of these with folks, and
yeah. Well, likes of when we first went to Heriot-Watt, it was Paul Hughes that was running the MSc course, and then he moved into the US, and I think he's doing the same in terms of what he was doing at the Institute of Brewing and Distilling, and he brought that to the US. So Kirsty and Christian were both mentored and tutored by him, and these conversations go on all the time, because we had a couple of groups from different years that when we were setting up the distillery, we went to Heriot-Watt, and we got them. They were obviously doing dissertations and write-ups at the end of the years, and actually got them working on all the projects. And it was kind of funny when we first met the guys, because actually they kind of went, so what's your plans for Arbikie? And it was kind of, there's it there. A lot of them went, don't really believe you'll ever do this, but lots of them are out in Seattle. They're all over the world distilling and brewing away. And I always call them our alumni, and there's kind of dialogue that goes on. And also, if you want to know what's going on in the industry, you can talk to lorry drivers and some of the others. But also, if you talk to the students at Heriot-Watt, there's a network. There's the Heriot-Watt mafia of distillers and brewers that all talk, and information flow is incredible.
I dated a girl named Lori Driver, just so you know that. Liz, it's a girl. The girls exist even now.
I was going to say something. I don't exactly remember at this point what it was with that whole conversation. But there certainly is a lot more comments that I wanted to kind of dig back into. Heather Lunan says, hello from foggy San Francisco. It's always whiskey weather here. Hello, Heather. Derek Stewart also commented when we were back talking about our meat conversation in the vapor train. Remember that? Yeah.
Vapor train.
It was pigeons.
Meat in the beer. Yeah. It's a Belgian process, started with pigeons falling into open fermentation vats. It does alter flavor, so
it does.
I guess would like to think about dunder pits in this moment in rum. Yeah, yes, Marty.
There's a case of dunder pits. Go ahead.
I always like to interject, try to every webinar we do, but micro terroir, I always like to talk about that. So I would imagine that there is, as Derek mentioned, it does alter flavor, which I would imagine that has to do with the microbiological terroir that the pigeon is dropping into the fermentation environment. And then Denise Jones says, Geist fruit and GNS maceration distillation made quite a few in Bamberg. Nice.
Is Geist ghost? Isn't that ghost?
Spirit.
Oh, yeah.
Ghost. Spirit.
Poltergeist.
There's also some questions about distribution in US. So can you walk through what is currently being distributed in US?
Yeah, so at the moment we are in New York. We're looking to get into Pennsylvania at the moment. We've also got online presence, so you can get us across, I think, 35 states online through people like Speakeasy. We are now into California with Whole Foods. with Nadar range, which is a climate positive gin. So that's a core brand in California now through Whole Foods. So our idea is to really increase our presence across the US and really take these spirits, because we spent so much time trying to develop them, you know, that we want to actually take them to market. So you can get us most of the states online, but also where my brother David is Connecticut, so we're in Connecticut as well. So
it's graduate. I mean, again, was saying before, we're a young business, so we're only 6 years in, but you know, online we can most states in the US, and actually we're rolling out across the states, and then obviously with Whole Foods that's rolling across the rest of the US as well. So we're getting there, and lockdown made it a bit harder, but actually there's a big revival, and you know, getting decent press with the strawberry vodka and talking rye whiskey and whiskey like this show always helps, because people just become aware of the brand, they become aware of the people.
We launched Johnny Walker on this show. A lot of people don't know that, but yeah.
nice.
So
I hear it's doing quite well.
Doesn't know that.
it was in a few small markets. Came on the show, boom.
Nice family business.
Yeah, it's small.
A local grocery shop. Yeah.
It's quite a big business these days.
Yeah, it's gotten there. They're still struggling. Go ahead, Lizard. You got more, don't you?
Comments?
You put her on the spot now.
Is there?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's called reading.
yes. So some more comments. Absolutely. So Brad also says Florida Cania is hosting a zero waste cocktail contest. One of my crew is really working on it. That sounds amazing. I actually had the privilege of, speaking of farming, I had the privilege of speaking at a conference a couple weeks ago, an animal science conference, trying to educate them on what some of our co-products and waste streams are in the distilling industry, to see if there was any valorizations to be had. And I mentioned, because of course the hospitality industry is an extension of our industry, so just had a quick conversation point around the citrus waste in the bar industry, and to see if there was some sort of valorization that would exist for the pet food industry. So I think there's, certainly a lot of good programs happening right now. Sounds like Florida Cania is trying to support some of that. So that's really exciting.
Are there animals that eat lemon, limes, oranges, and mint?
I have no idea. So here's the thing. I'm not a veterinary scientist. I was just presenting them with information.
I went to a dairy farm in southern Pennsylvania, and they said that they fed the cattle from waste fruit from the Port of Baltimore all the time.
Oh, wow.
That they were actually eating through I think he said like a 19-ton load of pineapples that had spoiled. Cows don't give a shit.
Humans, so they'll eat anything.
Yeah, there is so much you can do in this field in co-products. It's a huge area, and when we did our pea-based spirits, the climate positive, one of the things there is the co-products, the potential for protein extraction for both animal and human consumption is huge. It's huge. That was it.
Yeah,
I think that's about it for us.
Well, Brad, real quick, Brad also adds, it's fantastic you're doing this not just as a trend thing. I come from a family of farmers himself, he does, and we are always taught not to waste anything, including human flesh. So, Brad, he's down in Panama. They do things differently. So, thank you, Brad. John and Iain, our time has come to a close. So thank you very much for joining us, and thanks everyone else. Liz, who do we have on for next week?
Well, Marty, thank you so much for asking. Really exciting. We have another international distiller joining us next week. Cairo Distilling in Finland, and we have Kalle Valkonen, which I am 100% positive that I mispronounced. But come back next week and join us, and he will tell us how to pronounce it. So
Oh,
you don't want to miss that pronunciation.
Very brave.
And I'm sure we'll learn all sorts of exciting things about what they're doing in Finland.
So, folks, remember, go out, buy Lew's 2 books, especially the Satanic one is really scary. Check out Liz's website, especially if you need help distilling something around the house.
And
She
I was
makes
using
house
Glencairn.
calls. And John and Iain, thanks very much. Tell Dave he's a slacker, but I'll probably see him at one of the whiskey events out east. And I will try to make another unannounced call to the distillery next time in Scotland.
Please do. And thanks, everyone. It's been great fun.
That was
Thanks,
great fun.
guys.
Thank you. Do come and see us.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
now that you have a visitor
We will.
center, now that you're accepting visitors,
Yes, we're not
Hey,
hiding anymore.
Marty,
No,
when
no,
you're
it's-
Marty, when you're coming, we'll take the signs down. Don't worry. You know where the farm is.
I'll see John with a shotgun gun. Who is that? Gonna fuck up with it. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Guys,
Thanks, guys.